Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are about to start chatting with Jessie Randall from our beloved shoe brand, Loeffler Randall. We are waiting just for her to work out some internet stuff. We were just chatting with her, but we're having some technical difficulties. So give us just a few minutes and we will get started. We're so excited. Hi, guys. Catherine here. We look very grainy today.
I'm so sorry. There's something wrong with my internet.
Don't worry. We just started broadcasting, but we're not going to start asking questions yet because we're going to give people a few more minutes to join. I see lots of participants joining as we speak. So sit tight for the moment.
What do I do?
We see you. Yeah, you seem to be good now. And you look beautiful.
Okay.
Everybody who's joining.
It's just sometimes you guys.
Okay. If you start to freeze, then we'll sit tight until you get it back in place because I know everyone's going to want to hear your answers. So don't worry too much. We've had everyone's had their technical difficulties with working from home,
with worse Wi-Fi,
including us.
Exactly.
But just for everyone who's joining right now, we're going to be chatting with Jessie from Loeffler Randall. She has an amazing brand, and we've been friends for a while, but she's also a mentor to Catherine and me. She's a mom. She's a business owner. She's the face of the brand. So we're super stoked to talk to her.
My business partner.
Business partners are important. So it looks like we've got a good amount of attendees on right now. Should we go ahead and kick it off? Let's get started. Great. So just for anybody who's new to Creative Women's Coffees, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. If you have a question during the conversation, please stick it in the Q&A button at the bottom. We will definitely do our best to make sure Jessie addresses all of your questions. And let's see, if the internet goes out, bear with us. We're gonna just keep going through any freezes. And I think that's it. Have fun. So without further ado, Jessie does not need much of an introduction. She is the co-founder and creative director of the much adored New York-based brand Loeffler Randall, known for their shoes, their accessories, their clothing. I'm sure many of you guys have their shoes in your closet. She also, though, is a mom of not one, but 3 children. She balances being a mom, being a creative director, being an entrepreneur, and we've always been really impressed how she seems to do it all. And we haven't really gotten to talk to her very much since COVID hit, except via some frantic emails.
Yes.
So we're really excited to sit down and hear how she's balancing motherhood, business ownership, and the current pandemic. So I think that everybody's on. Let's kick it off with our first question, and then we'll go from there. Okay, cool. I'll start. So Jessie, a lot of people have been talking about spending more time at home with their significant other, which is a little bit intense for some of us. And as we know, but maybe not all of our listeners know, you actually founded the brand with your husband, Brian. So you guys are used to working together and being together every day. And we're just curious about tips for spending that much time with the person who you also parent with and do everything with.
That's a really good question. I feel like, Brian and I are together 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, which I like. But I feel like with this quarantine situation, it's been so much more intense than it usually is. Because, we used to, we would go to work, but we wouldn't commute together. We had different offices. We would, we didn't get lunch together or anything when we were at work. So it's just been super, super intense. And also just because it's been such an intense time with the business and everything going on, I try to hide from him during the day because I have a very loud Zoom voice and he loves Zoom and he's on Zoom every day. And this is like one of my first Zooms. So we're really different. So I think sort of like just trying to find space away from each other has been our secret.
Yeah. Do you guys have like differentiated spaces in the house where you can each go? Because I was talking to one girlfriend who says between her and her husband, whoever has to take the call, they have to go out to the car and sit in the car.
So I was about to send him to the car because he was just on a Zoom during this and I wanted to boot him off. He moves around the house. He has lots of different spots. We have really bad Wi-Fi, which you'll probably find out during this call. I've been doing a lot of WFB, working from bed. I don't know about you guys, but I basically just sit in my bed all day. And yeah, he's like at a desk or he's walking around and yeah, so we have our space during the day, and then at night we're trying to rewatch The Sopranos.
Oh, that's a good one.
Together, yeah.
Having something distracting at night that's not work is really helpful.
Yeah, and I actually got him to do the class with me. Do you know that workout, Terrence?
Yeah, he's doing it.
He's started doing it. He loved it. It's so amazing. I feel like it's the one thing that's been helping me keep my sanity.
That's such a good tip.
Entire ordeal.
For everybody who's listening, how old are your kids, and are they also, obviously they're in the house with you, but are you guys, do you have I know in the beginning with COVID, you posted some extremely adorable, at least for outsiders, pictures of the Murphy family schedule, and you guys showed like, morning was homework and then afternoon might be a craft and like when their reading time was, but are you guys still sticking to a schedule of like family time versus homework versus work, or has that been thrown out the window?
I feel like, I went in with a very optimistic view. So my kids are, I have Casper and Clementine, they're twins also. And they are going to be 13 in June, which is insane to me. I still think of them as babies. And then my little baby is 9, Harry. So I had really ambitious goals when we started, and then one day in, we just kind of threw it all out the window. The one thing I'll say is that my kids, for some reason, just go completely insane when they have access to an iPad. It like scrambles their brain or something. I don't know what it does. It doesn't seem like other children are afflicted with this, but mostly our schedule is like keeping them off the iPads all day. Until at least like some days it's 3:30, some days it's 5.
Yeah, got it.
So that's like the big thing that we do, and then we try to go outside for a walk each day, and then they have school all day.
How are you doing that? Is that with like other activities, like a craft or something, or is that with school? We're gonna get to more kid stuff later, but how are you keeping them off the iPad?
I'm hiding the iPads so they can't believe that that's how I'm doing it.
That's
the only way.
Great. All right. Well, before we get to too much kid stuff, I want to talk briefly about work, because you and I have talked so much in the past about how we find inspiration when we're out and about. And I know you've traveled to Mexico and Morocco for recent collections and inspiration. And I'm wondering, first of all, if you're currently doing any designing right now, and second of all, if you are, how you're finding inspiration. Because I know for me personally, it's been so hard being cooped up, also trying to like get inspired.
Yeah. When we knew that we were gonna have to leave the office, I mean, of course, we had no idea that it was gonna be for this long. Mm-hmm. But we really crammed, my team and I, and we got so much designing done. And we skipped a prototype round for resort, because usually we do like 3 rounds, and this time we said, you know what, this is the collection, and this is what it's going to be. So we did all this work before we left, and my team was amazing and got everything together. And then we've been really dividing stuff up really well. So yeah, we have been designing. We've been working on spring. I feel like it's been really challenging in some ways, but it's also been really creative in other ways, because I've been I've been so stressed out during this time, and I've just been trying to kind of maintain my equilibrium. Just really trying to focus on the kids and letting Brian sort of more focus on the business, dividing and conquering that way. And one of the few things that really has kept my spirits up is, trying to give back. So I've been sewing all these masks for people on the front lines, and that's like one of the few things that has just brought me so much joy during this. Mm-hmm. And I just get really inspired when I make things. So even though like that, I feel like is informing other things that we're doing, and we're going to start selling some of the masks on our site. And so I feel like, it kind of goes both ways. It's like, it's really hard I really don't do a lot of Zooms because I am always in my pajamas. And so that's been kind of hard, I think, for my team, because I'm just not, I'm so all over everything when I was in the office, but now I'm always cooking for the kids, or, you know, it's just sort of like, I don't really know what to do with myself. Plus we did so much, I don't know about you guys, but we did so much work before we left, and I don't really have access to any, I mean, I don't even have my computer here.
Yeah,
wow.
that's wild. Yeah, I find it's.
I would have definitely ordered an Apple off of the off of the internet by now.
I have my laptop.
Brian has his laptop, and I just like, I mean, the way that I work at my office, like, I'm really not even in my office. I'm just like,
You said that before. You're very
you know, we're just like looking at swatches and looking at samples and like running up to the garment district and like,
Right.
so you know, I'm never even on that computer, but it has been, in retrospect, I should have brought it with me because I'm doing everything on my phone. It's driving me crazy.
People would love to hear about that, I think, because I know Lizzie and I also are really struggling where normally Lizzie and her design team start with the pieces and they mock things up, they play with things, they string necklaces.
But like we have physical materials in front of us, which makes such a big difference.
And then maybe ultimately it's going to land on the computer in the form of a technical spec and have all the details loaded into the computer after the sample's been prototyped by hand. And they're finding themselves working the opposite direction, which is a huge challenge. And
So
not
hard.
things using Photoshop, cutting old necklaces apart, refashioning them, using materials we know, and taking a picture and saying, what if we move this to this? So that when they're finally back in the office, they kind of have a roadmap for our vendors. But is your design team that you said you guys were starting to work on spring? I guess it's a two-part question. A, you can't travel this season, so it's not like you're getting inspiration from Morocco, I assume. Are you
Thank you for telling me about the Bellevue Country Club, because that was my
that's a good one.
I went there because of you guys. I love that place.
Are you finding inspiration I mean, you're currently at the beach. Are you finding inspiration in your surroundings, or are you much more looking sort of introspectively or at more of a specific maybe art reference or mood board? And then how are you guys designing if you're not accessing the fashion district every day?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's been kind of challenging. I mean, on the one hand, I'm such a homebody that it's kind of like my dream to be stuck at home. So there's that, which is good. But yeah, you know, I feel like so much more grateful. I mean, I always was incredibly grateful for being able to take the trips that I was able to take with my design team. But now, I mean, it just feels like we didn't even realize, you know, this, you know, I saw it as a gift, but I didn't have this perspective of like, maybe I'm never gonna be able to do it again, you know? So, yeah, I think for me, it's been really hard being away from materials, you know? I think I'm trying to pivot the business to, you know, start making things that people want right now. So, you know, we are making these pretty masks. And then I started to think about like, maybe we should be making sweatsuits, because like, that's all I'm wearing. And like, I can't find any that I want to wear. And, so I've been like making prototypes on my sewing machine, but I can't find any sweat material. So like that's been really tricky, because when I'm at the office, like we can get stuff really easily, or we have stuff laying around. And like, you know, for my masks, I'm like just digging around my house trying to look for any little tiny scrap that I can find of fabric, because I just don't have that much. It's hard to get stuff.
Right. I think that this is so interesting because Lizzie's been struggling with this, and it's sort of comforting to hear that other designers are truly limited by virtue of not being in their environment. Actually, we have a really great question that kind of ties into that, which is, this is a two-part question, but I'm going to start with the second part actually, which is, as we're adopting and sort of enforcing more circular fashion practices and being more sustainable and being more aware of what we're making and what maybe the new fashion calendar is going to look like, what are your thoughts on how that might impact? You're talking about changing the business a bit, about decreasing retail sales. Like maybe you're not going to create 10 drops a year, and maybe it's not going to be a shoe in every single color if you can't access more fabrics, but maybe it's going to be more about creating a sweatsuit, which you never did before. But can you talk a little bit about how your footprint changes in light of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, the same way that you guys are, we're just learning every day.
Yeah.
I definitely think, you know, the vendor base is just shrinking, just by virtue of a lot of these department stores are having a lot of difficulty. And so, you know, we're gonna become more direct, more of a direct business, which is exciting in some ways. So that will change. I think also you were asking about the spring collection, and we really kind of are like, okay, let's go back to the things that we know do really well, that people love from us, and let's so we really are sort of getting back to the core for spring. I feel like it's a little limiting creativity wise because we just don't have the capacity to do as much prototyping, and it's just not possible. Like, we're having to be really edited before we even necessarily go through the creative process.
Yeah, it's almost like the business is dictating the creative, which for creative is probably really tricky for both of you guys.
Definitely.
Definitely.
We have talked to other creative people, and like innovation is one of the things that comes out of crisis. And I think your masks are incredible. I've been following all the pictures of your masks, and I'm wondering, is that something that like your current factories could take on? Should that or sweatsuits say become a category, or is that something that you kind of have to like reinvent the wheel with?
Well, no, we're in the process of getting our masks made.
Awesome.
We designed one that has a little ruffle on the top, which is really cute. And so I made the mock-up of it. Someone on my team sketched it, and I made it. I figured out how to make it on my machine, and we sent it off to our factory in India. And I'm waiting for the prototype now. And so we're in the process. We already have orders for it from some of our vendors. People are really excited about it. But so now we're just like waiting for the mail to get here so that we can try it on. And we're going to be donating masks. For every mask that we sell, we're going to be donating. So I love that aspect. I've gotten really involved in sort of like trying to raise money and do good with the fashion pieces that I've been doing. Started with these hats I made last summer, and then these cardigans that we made. And so this feels kind of like a natural evolution. And I mean, I'm excited about these new little projects. I think I always like doing new stuff. I think that's really fun.
Izzy and I are having a really similar experience. First of all, the masks are amazing. For anybody who's listening and has not seen the masks, go on Jessie's Instagram. I mean, they're cuter than your average mask. They've got Liberty prints. They've got beautiful mottos hand embroidered inside. I mean, she's really, only Jessie could make a mask as cute as she's made one. But I think I was going to say, we, partly because of the shift to knowing that wholesale is sort of not always reliable, and then obviously in the face of COVID, knowing that wholesale is really can be unreliable, plus the fact that I think that brands like ours have always been relatively conscious, but really want to figure out how we can give back more without being like, a Tom's shoe brand that's a one for one. We didn't build a business that way. We can't afford to do that. But we, like you said, you did amazing woven hats last year that had a give back component. Lizzie and I have been doing exclusive necklaces for our website with limited materials that we know we can't wholesale to stores anyway because the materials are too limited, that have different give back components. And I think that building communities around these little projects that then keep you guys as designers inspired is such a new part of the business that pre-COVID we probably didn't get to appreciate so much.
It's also kind of like it motivates me a little bit. I'm like, oh great, this sold, and now I get to like write a check to something I care about. Like, that's a motivating factor that I didn't really previously have. I don't know if you feel the same way. I'm sure you do.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I had a goal to raise money for the ACLU last year, and we were able to raise $4,000. And then, this year I wanted to raise $10,000 for them. And then, this crisis hit. We re-platformed our website in February, which is really exciting. Sort of ill-timed, but just like so many things. But we were able to implement this thing on our site that is a donate button. And
oh my God, we stole it from you.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys are doing it. That's so great. So it was meant to raise money for ACLU, but then once this crisis hit, we pivoted to donate to No Kid Hungry, which
I was on your website buying shoes, saw that, and asked.
Oh my gosh! No, my team told me. They told me that you made a donation. That was so sweet of you.
So cool that you guys did that, and we thought that was an amazing idea. I have one more question about production stuff before we move on a little bit, and that someone's asked, which is a great question. So we all think of Loeffler as a really big brand. I'm sure people who are thinking about creating their own lines, one of the frequent questions is, how do you find vendors and all of that. You talk a lot about trying to reduce waste and doing small batch production on your website. So how can you balance that with probably minimums from your factories? Has that taken a lot of negotiation, or do you not hit minimums and they let you get by with it? Or how are you able to work with factories if you are doing small batch production?
Well, I feel like by and large, the things that we're making that we feel really confident in, we can hit the minimums. If we suddenly become a fully direct business, that's going to be a different story. But we, up until recently, we've been probably 75% wholesale. So, we knew what the demand was going to be, but always there are things, I mean, I'm sure with you guys have it all the time too. It's, something that I really love, but then nobody else really got behind, and I really, really believe in it, or my team really believes in it and will invest in it. I mean, I think our factories are willing to kind of make concessions for us, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes we have to buy more of something than we necessarily projected because we really believe in getting it made, and then we just have more of it on hand. But we're getting better and better. I mean, I feel like, you just learn more as you go along. I mean, of course, now we're going to have to learn a totally new way, because how is everyone going to be buying in this crisis and after this crisis? We don't know. But before this happened, I feel like we were getting better at predicting what was needed versus what wasn't needed. And I think that this crisis will make us get even more predictive on that kind of stuff, which I do think is a little bit sad, because I feel like the industry was already so fearful and sort of like buying from this place of fear of like, oh, this thing sold so well last year, so I'm going to buy it again, and I'm not going to take the chance. Like, there was sort of this risk averseness even before this crisis hit, and I imagine that will only reinforce that, which isn't as fun. I feel like we've talked about this.
Totally.
Like, it's not as fun as a designer when it's a lot of core stuff. Although I love core stuff because it makes my life easier. But
right. Stuff is great, but then I have to say, like, it's sometimes like when you guys will have like a shoe with a feather on it or something that I'm like, oh, that's what I really want to spend my money on, because it like sparks joy, and it is a bit kooky and different. And that's something we've been talking a lot about for upcoming collections. Like, we obviously need to play it safe. We're not going to design everything out of the box, but then I don't know if you agree, but it's important to have a few things that people are like, that's the one thing that's really going to make me happy come fall, because I need something to like snap me out of this and like make me happy.
Yeah,
totally. I mean, we were even just talking about this with the masks, because we were kind of debating of like, what should it look like? And I said, I've gotten such great feedback on the one I made with the ruffle. And I just said, like, there's so many out there that you can get that are plain, that I'd rather go with the one that's more unique.
Yep.
So we'll see. Knock on wood.
Your personal style is like so feminine, so bohemian, so pretty. Like, I feel like whenever Kath and I see you, we're like, what are you wearing? Like, we have to know.
In fact, someone, and I will say she's from our team, her, once she says this call cannot end if she does not know where your top is from. So can you
I asked you guys before what the dress code was, and you guys said you were like, oh, not like a t-shirt, but not like a dress, but I'm wearing a dress.
Yes.
So cute. Dress.
Is this you?
Because I've literally only been wearing pajamas for 40 days. So I just thought this face actually looks normal. This is Horivakui.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, I love this brand so much. It's so special.
I think there's something to be said for special. Like, we have had so many conversations about making things that make people feel special, and now more than ever, it's like you need to feel a little bit of happiness, because there's certainly a lot of insanity.
Absolutely.
Totally. And I feel like for you guys with jewelry and accessories, it's so it's just perfect for this time. Like, one of my really good friends owns a beauty brand, and she was, like all of us, really upset about, the impact of this on her business. And I said, oh my gosh, like, I think it's gonna be great for beauty. I mean, how many of these Zoom calls
No, it's true.
with necklaces, same thing with earrings. It's like, what are those little things that show up in a Zoom call that make you feel good about yourself? Yeah. So I think that kind of stuff's really important.
Leads to the next question that someone submitted, which is, how do we advertise and drum up sales during this time when clothing and shoes and accessories aren't essential and people have maybe been furloughed or people have to be more cost conscious? So how do you kind of talk about out of both sides of your mouth saying like, I understand that everybody's kind of in this wait and see moment, but also, hey, buy some jewelry while you're at it because keep our business alive. So Lizzie and I have a few examples, but Jessie, do you have any examples about how your team from a marketing perspective is more thinking about selling right now during this sensitive time?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to be really sensitive. I've gotten a couple of requests of like, oh, can you take a picture of yourself like dressed up? And I've just not really wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It just hasn't felt really appropriate, and it just feels sort of fake. Like I'm not gonna be wearing a ball gown. I mean, although, but I'm not wearing super fancy shoes right now. And so I think we've been trying to just sort of pivot to the products we have that do feel applicable. And, the good thing is that we do have a big business in events and weddings. And I think for people that are planning their weddings, like it's a great time for them actually to be getting their wedding shoes. So it's kind of both sides of it. I mean, I think the things that are really, really special, it's a great time to buy it. But then for the other things, it's like we're really sort of focusing on the things that really make more sense, within reason though, because we do have like specific products that we bought that were for a time, when we bought this stuff, we didn't know that this was going to be happening. So I just think just being authentic and being real and being sensitive to this really devastating time for a lot of people. And I think just trying to take it down a little bit and just, I don't know, I feel like we're all being like a little quieter, a little more cautious, and in a good way.
Yeah,
for sure.
Can you talk, Lizzie, a little bit about how, from our brand perspective, Lizzie handles the social media for us along with another team member. So what are you guys mainly thinking about as we try to drum up sales?
I mean, as you said, I think sensitivity is the key word. We're not talking about like buying the biggest, most expensive statement earring. We know that so many events have been put on hold and stuff. I have a lot of friends who have postponed weddings. With all of that said, I think what you're saying about like for people who are still planning weddings, like there is that excitement that you had, and you don't want to just like say sayonara to that entirely. Like if you were planning a wedding, you should still get to have your wedding, even if it's in a year from now. So like getting to shop for a pair of earrings and save them for that wedding day, or shop for a pair of beautiful shoes and save them for that wedding day, I still think is a very meaningful thing. We just are trying to approach that cautiously.
Yeah. And I think that personal touch, like it's not often that you find yourselves at home with like time on your hands. I mean, normally you guys are running like through 10 meetings in New York, out to dinner, out to networking events, whatever it is. Like all of a sudden we can pause and connect more with customers. So I think it's also like Lizzie's been writing handwritten notes with e-commerce sales, and we've been trying to like really maybe advertise and drum up sales, not by necessarily like pushing the bright new thing that no one needs right now, but more saying like, hey, if you're a loyal customer and you still want to see us in 6 months, try to be loyal right now, because it's.
And I feel like customers have been so wonderful about that. I mean, we've gotten so many emails, so many DMs, so many notes about people saying like, we're rooting for you guys. And it means so much, because I feel like, while everyone doesn't understand sort of like the ins and outs of like how stressful this time is on a business like ours, I feel like people are really just always sending these notes like, keep going, and these next few weeks are going to be so crucial for businesses like ours. And it's so nice to it's just like you kind of feel like you're running a race and there are people cheering for you from the sidelines, and it really does help you keep going.
Definitely. I have not been shopping all that much, but I will say the things I'm shopping for are from brands that I really want to still be able to shop with in a year from now.
Yes.
There are a few brands or shops that I'm like, would be devastated if they had to close their doors. So I'm like, in the same way that we have loyal customers supporting us, I want to make sure that they're around this time next year, because like they're the brands I go to when I'm getting a gift or whatever it is.
And I think to your point, Jessie, it's been an emotional roller coaster. And for the lowest lows, you get those opposite highs when a customer who you've never, I had someone write a note and said, we had said, this is going to be delayed because of the shipping. And she said, like, I'll be here for you guys. You take as much time as you need, or something like that. And just all of that positive reinforcement is, I mean, the bizarre silver lining, and almost like they're holding your hand as you go through this process. So for everybody listening, thank you guys.
Yes.
But I do think that is a silver lining as we kind of get closer to our customers. And do you feel comfortable just at a high level? You mentioned wholesale used to be 75%, direct, which is in the case of Loeffler Randall, their website was 25%. How do you see that? Is your team all working right now? First of all, if you feel comfortable talking about team structure and like business going forward, do you have a few sentences about if you had to project what the business looks like? Will you be downsizing? Will you change your wholesale direct balance? How will that?
Well, I feel like we're kind of in the middle of trying to figure that out right now.
Mhm.
You know, I keep saying to Brian that, you know, if we can survive this, I think it bodes really well for our brand.
Definitely.
You know, and the same thing with these department stores. It's like, you know, how is it going to shake out? And, you know, I think it's going to be, we're going to go with the people that pay their bills and are really strong partners with us. So, you know, and then I think that there'll be even more demand from them too if there aren't other places to buy it. I mean, I just don't have really a crystal ball, but that's sort of my sense. And I think, you know, we always love selling direct to our customers. We love having that direct relationship. So the idea that we could be growing our direct channel is something that appeals to me. But it felt sort of like a Band-Aid rip.
Definitely. All right, we want to chat more about kids because, as some of our listeners know, and you know, Jessie, Kath and I are both expecting our first. And one thing that's nuts is like we had kind of gone, you know, this winter and stuff, we were thinking like, oh, by the time maternity leave rolls around, we'll have it all figured out and everything set up. And now everything's been turned on its head. But you're someone we've looked to a lot over the years for inspiration of like how to balance kids and work. I remember you telling me a while ago that you work from home on Fridays, and that was a pre-COVID thing, just like a lifelong thing. And I'm wondering if you have other tricks, especially now for so many women who are working moms and with their kids all day, on the balance, because I know it's crazy.
Yeah, it is really crazy. First of all, I'm so excited for you guys.
Thank you.
I like practically started crying when I found out. For you guys, it's so special. Just thinking about you guys both going on maternity leave at the same time.
Oh my God.
Don't worry, Mom.
That's, you know, I feel like that's one of the big, huge mistakes that I made. When I had my twins, it was in 2007. So my company was like 3 years old. And we were doing so well at that time. And I was really the only person on my design team at that time. I sketched everything, I spec'd everything. And it was just sort of like a growing pain of becoming a bigger business. I was sort of reluctant to hire people. And anyway, so then we ended up having our twins, and my daughter ended up being in the NICU for a month. And, you know, I had to go back to work immediately because there was nobody there to do anything design related. So I feel like that was one huge mistake that I made.
Immediately, do you mean immediately?
What?
When you say immediately, do you mean?
I would say even like before going on maternity leave, to just get somebody trained up. I mean, I think it's sort of a delicate balance because like you don't want to have someone who, you know, it takes a lot of time to train someone. So that could be more work and that can feel more daunting. But I think like I really wish that I would have hired up, because it put so much stress on me that I wasn't even able to be with my kids so much. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up with this thing of, you know, taking Fridays off to be with my kids, because I went back to work immediately full time because there really wasn't any other option. I mean, that was how we were going to pay our rent, you know, so I had to, but it was just really emotional for me. And I had like a breakdown basically. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I've got to spend, especially like, you know, your mom will know this, but like having twins, I felt like it was impossible for me to get to know these two babies about 2 days a week. It was just not possible. So I ended up, in the beginning, I took off Mondays and Fridays and was home with them. And then that just was not feasible.
Right.
So it's been Fridays, but I think that that's been a really nice balance, because I feel like I've been able to sort of have the work life and then have the I would have the one day of being able to go to the park with them and hang out with the other moms. And it was this sort of, it was a nice balance to have that.
And I've got to think, having a black and white, like for me, I'm sort of bad at like balancing and saying, oh, well, I'll just go in 2 hours late today, because then before I know it, like I'm at home, doing emails, even though I've told myself I'm going to carve out this personal time. So I imagine the black and white cutoff is just saying, like, Fridays are off limits, like, team, I will not be here. Do not schedule a meeting with me on a Friday. Having it be a little bit more clearly distinguished sounds like a good trick, because
it is.
Might abuse the boundaries otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that I end up working most of the day on Fridays, but like when the kids were little, I really wasn't available. I mean, it's so funny to me because the kids are almost 13 now, and to this day on Fridays, Brian will be like, so we have a meeting at 10. I'm like, I don't work on Fridays. 13 years later, he's still giving me shit about it.
So funny.
I just think it's really important. I mean, it's, he ends up taking time in other ways. Like he works out sometimes during the day, and I'm there on those 4 days, and I never even take lunch. I work all the way through lunch. I'm just it's just sort of like you become incredibly efficient because you have to be. Because you have to get home in time to be able to be home with them for dinner, and you have to be there to send them off to school. So it's like your time is tighter, but you end up just getting so much more done, I feel like.
Totally.
And now that
you're not doing nanny share?
No, we're going to.
We're going to do a nanny share, but now, we're concerned because we just don't know even when we can get a nanny, because no one, social distancing is real.
Oh, I know.
Everything's kind of on hold, but we will do a nanny share, and the kids will spend a ton of time together, and they'll be like twins, which will be great.
That'll be so good for their, social.
That's the plan.
So, yeah.
Totally. So now that you guys are all in the house together, obviously your kids are at an age where you don't have to keep an eye on them 24/7. Are they doing school through the computer, or how involved do you have to oversee that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the twins are in middle school, and so I ended up just getting these really kind of crappy desks on Amazon.
That's so smart, though.
We didn't have any desks here, so I found out pretty early that they need their own room with a door. So my son goes down in the basement, Clementine's up in the bedroom, and then Harry goes into the TV room. And the twins have a homeroom Zoom at 8:30 every morning. And sometimes I'm not even up that early. I don't know. My sleep schedule has been really weird. I've just been having trouble sleeping, and then I fall asleep at 4 a.m, and then I'm out. So I've sort of said to them, you are responsible for getting yourself. So I feel that's been kind of good, is this self-reliance, this idea of, I feel my mom kind of raised me that way. It was sort of she didn't nag me. She didn't remind me to do, it was sort of I don't know if you have a test. I'm, that's your problem, So I feel they have that, but I think maybe I made the mistake with my little one, thinking that he's in the 3rd grade, and I kind of was okay, well, he's gonna have to figure it out on his own too. But it's so much for him, and he has a little bit of a hard time focusing, and so what's nice is that his day starts a little bit later. But Brian actually has started setting his computer up next to Harry, and they work side by side, and Brian's been doing a lot. Brian is such a better teacher than I am. He has so much more patience. I have no patience. I'm terrible. I could never be a teacher. I have so much respect for teachers.
How many of our mom friends have verbatim said I could never be a teacher because my kids will ask me, Mom, I don't get it. Mom, I don't get it. And now they just the moms burst into tears because they're this is the hardest job out there.
So hard, but Brian is just really good at teaching.
We feel.
So, and he enjoys it. So he's been kind of, and then, then Harry will come to me and I'll work on something with him for a little bit. But I do feel like you kind of just have to throw things out the window with this. It's like, it's not going to be perfect. They're not going to probably learn as much as they would have before, but they're also learning other things. They're, my kids are sweeping floors, which they had never done,
Your kids are also at an age where, it's not like you have a 4-year-old. Your kids have friends, social activities, sports. I keep thinking about all these poor kids who, are missing big events right now. And do they also do friend Zooms, or how are you handling them missing the social stuff?
Well, Brian and I our children are probably going to be in therapy for the rest of their lives, because they're the only 13-year-olds in all of Brooklyn that don't have a phone.
That's a good thing, I think.
I think that's great.
It's so cruel, but we just feel pretty strongly that it's not a good idea for them. So it is really socially isolating. My son's been doing some Zooms with his friends, and my daughter does these TikToks that she's not supposed to be doing, but she does them anyway. So they get a little bit of the social stuff, but being on a Zoom it's kind of, not like this, but if you're 12 and there's 8 kids, or even Harry's been doing it with his friends. He had a Zoom birthday for one of his friends, and it's kind of hard for a 9-year-old to just sit there and there's no activity. They're not running around. They don't know what to talk about.
Yeah. Totally.
So it's hard. There's this thing called House Party that is you can play little games together. So they've done that a little bit with their friends. But I'm really eager for them to eventually be able to actually be with some of their friends.
Right. Absolutely. It's a blessing they have each other. At least
I know. I feel so grateful for that, because, they really do. We get a lot of social time just as a family.
That's awesome.
They're very close with each other. So.
Silver lining. Okay, so speaking of your daughter, because we're obsessed with her style.
Oh, thank you.
I know she's interested in fashion, and you guys did a Crew Cuts collaboration with J. Crew last year. And I'm just wondering, with you being home and her seeing your guys' work even more firsthand than she normally does she ask to get involved in stuff, or is she offering insight?
No. She has a really different style from me.
Okay.
And also I feel we just haven't been very focused on style since we've been here. And it's been hard to even wait, hang on. Brian, can you not do that? He's doing the dishes. So no, I feel style hasn't really been on her radar as much now. Yeah. She's very into James Charles and makeup tutorials, so she's been doing that.
Also very fun.
Also very impressive.
And I know it's not a top of mind topic right now, style, but just because Lizzie and I want to know, and you have great style and you're proving it today, we can't help but ask you, do you, maybe not this moment because we're all wearing more pajamas than we ever have before, but do you have style icons when you're back in New York, when you're doing a day at the office or getting dressed up for the occasional event? Are there favorite brands that you go to? Are there favorite sort of muses that you look to? How do you, as Jessie, the brand, think about your own style and what inspires you?
I feel I've been asked this question a lot, and I always just don't have a very good answer to it.
Hard one. We selfishly want to know.
I know. I wish I had some famous actress that I always look to, but I really don't. I feel I really look to people like you guys, real women that I know, people in my office, my friends. I definitely feel I love to kind of discover new brands and that kind of stuff. I have some brands like this brand that I'm obsessed with, and I tend to kind of go back to the same brands over and over again. I don't buy a ton of stuff. I like to buy something really special and then wear it, like you guys do too. It's buy something really special and just wear it over and over again, wear it in a different way. Absolutely. So there he goes. So so I feel I'm just sort of I'm always looking. I always when when I'm in Soho or my office is, you know, people are always saying to me, oh, I saw you on the street. And I'm like, I'm always, my eyes are always looking down at shoes.
There.
It's like only ever looking at shoes. I only look down at feet.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm always just looking, but it's not necessarily someone like famous or.
And you get a lot of inspiration from, I mean, one of the ways you started is by being inspired by vintage pieces. And in your own closet for your clothing, is it more vintage or is it more like small batch new brands that you love? Or is it like, I'm going to buy one piece, but it's going to be a heritage designer brand, like a designer brand that I'm going to invest in? Do you kind of like
I don't really have much like designer stuff, and I feel like that's one thing since having kids is I used to spend all my weekends looking for vintage stuff, and I feel like that was one thing that was so sad, just like went out the window once I had kids.
Right.
So, you know, because I feel like vintage shopping really takes time. You know, you've got to know exactly what you're searching for. You've got to find the exact thing. You've got to then measure yourself, which I never do. And then I like buy things on Etsy and then they don't fit me.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think like if there's a specific thing, it's so wonderful to find vintage if I can. But I do have like a couple designers that I just always like to wear. And then now I've got my sewing machine out. So now I'm just going to start like sewing stuff, I guess.
So cool.
I love that.
That's where the innovation's going to come.
Definitely. Okay, so I know this is kind of like a grab bag question, but you're a very big reader, as am I, and I'm wondering if you have any reading tips for quarantine, pandemic reading tips.
That's such a good question. You know, I, for some reason, was reading these really, really depressing books at the beginning of coronavirus, and I feel like that was just not smart at all. So I'm trying to look for things that are like lighter, but I'm kind of having trouble. Have you read anything great recently?
I read a lighter book recently, and it was the biography of Katharine Hepburn, and I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's great. I haven't read it.
Golden age of Hollywood, and like you kind of get lost in these tales that seem so like splendid and like it's, you know, it's historical, it's like very interesting, but it's like kind of transports you to a different world, and I think that's what we're all looking for right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm for some reason I started, have you heard of this book, Hidden Valley Road?
No.
It's don't read it. But it's really good, but it's about this family that had it's a true story about a family with 12 children where 6 of them had schizophrenia.
Oh my goodness. I can't read this right now.
Yeah, I don't think
no. But it's like fascinating, and I love nonfiction.
Totally.
I'm trying to think. Did you guys read that book, You Should Talk to Somebody? Or you really should talk to someone?
But
that's a really good book. It's a true story. It's a therapist who ends up going through a breakup and needs to go to therapy herself.
That's me.
So it's sort of like therapy from both sides, being the patient and the therapist.
Well, I got last summer after you read Traitor and the Spy, you put it on your Instagram.
Oh yeah, I love that book.
And then I had about 6 months of like only reading spy novels because of you. So thank you.
Oh, send me some other ones because I love that book. But
Yeah.
I read another book by that author and I didn't like it as much.
Well, you really turned me on to an entire genre.
And you are a devoted nonfiction reader. Do you also like, is it to educate yourself or to transport yourself, or are you reading any books right now about like, I don't know, business and how like to prevail during crises, or is that just too much work when you're supposed to be having free time?
I feel like I never read stuff like that. I don't know. I just really love nonfiction. I mean, I'm in a writing group and I write like memoir stuff, and I've always really been drawn to, I mean, I can read seriously the most boring memoirs and biographies and it doesn't bore me. I just love it. So, but fiction sometimes really does bore me. But my daughter had To Kill a Mockingbird. She's going to start reading that. And so I read that over this quarantine, you know. I actually started reading my kids' Catcher in the Rye last night, which I can't really, I think it's going to be really not appropriate, but I thought they would like it because it has so many swears in it. And they are loving it. So,
I love it. So very lastly, it's just a fun ending one. Who do you follow on Instagram, and or any TV tips, any self-care tips, any meditation, yoga? What are the things that are getting you through the day when you're not frantic about work?
Okay, so I think I was talking to you about this maybe before the call started, but I've gotten really into the class. Have you guys done it?
No, but I've been so bad about working out ever since I became pregnant, because I was so sick for the first 20 weeks that I working out went out the window, and now I haven't gotten back into working out.
That's the worst feeling on earth.
It's a problem.
I had that too. It was so awful. I didn't work out or even do any walking during any of my pregnancies. I just couldn't. But anyway, this class is so good. I feel like, first of all, it's $40 to stream it per month. And so one class in real life was about $40. So it's like a whole month for the cost of one class. And, Tara and Toomey is the person who started it. And all the teachers are great, but I love to go when she's doing it, because it's just sort of like an hour long, her like yelling at you, like you yell, you scream, you like let out all your anger, frustration. And then she has, she's sort of like challenging you to think differently, to get out of these sort of like negative thought patterns, and sometimes you cry during it. It's just, I really have loved it. I'm trying to hold myself accountable to doing it every other day.
I love that. I really miss that. Like, I miss the classes that make you like sweat and forget about everything else because you're so focused on like staying alive. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what this is.
And you also mentioned you're now rewatching The Sopranos, which is one of my personal favorites, but that's a good distraction too.
So good. Yeah. What have you guys been watching? I'm desperate for new things to watch.
A lot. So we just started Ozark, which is like kind of preposterous,
violent, good,
entertaining. And we watched Unorthodox.
Yeah, which people
I loved that.
I read the book.
I read that book. Did you read the book?
Yeah.
It was so different than the book.
I really loved the book.
Yeah. The book was completely different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I liked the book better.
I liked the book better than the show.
Yeah. Oh, I love the costumes in the show.
A really good one that just came out on this weekend, which is an ode to our husbands, but actually anybody can watch it. It's fantastic. ESPN is putting out a 10-part series on Michael Jordan.
Did it already start?
It started, I think you can get it on Netflix now, but it started.
Yeah, Brian's watching it. Brian grew up in Chicago, so he's obsessed.
It's right. So good.
There were 2 episodes this weekend, and then I guess 2 episodes next weekend, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's 10-part. And as Lizzie's husband Peter said, it's the only thing happening in sports right now. So if you like sports, you are watching this documentary. But Lizzie and I are not sports experts.
I'm not a sports person, but
it's an awesome show.
We find such inspiration in people who are like at the top of their game with anything. So like, to see someone who just couldn't have been better at what they were doing is so inspiring.
It's pretty inspiring, and it gives
I read the best American sports writing every year. There's like an anthology, and I'm completely not sporty.
Right.
But the same thing. I actually love watching stuff like that or reading about stuff like that.
Yeah, ESPN. We got to start watching like more or listening to the 30/30 podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
There's also,
I need a podcast too. I haven't been listening to any.
I know.
Lizzie just listened to How I Built This with Sweet Green, which is a very inspiring podcast. When you I think it's really good to listen to those kinds of things right now, because none of the businesses that we kind of look up to just got there, on a free meal ticket. And
did you listen to the chicken salad chick one?
No, but I want to.
You guys need to listen to it tomorrow.
Done.
It's so emotional. Yeah. It's so good.
Amazing. I think that, it's such a true takeaway where like no one got where they are just by like luck. So there are always crises, maybe not as big as this one, but we've all had hurdles. And I know your business is now, are you guys 15 years old?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 16.
It's amazing. And I'm sure it hasn't always been easy. So I know you guys will get through this too. You're one of the brands that I want to support, because you better be here next year so I can keep buying shoes.
I got Simone flats, but they're coming tomorrow. So
I can't wait to see you in those.
Well, our mom's been aware of your brand for a long time, but she's been checking out what's the classic knot, the mule with the knot.
With the bow, a penny?
No, with like a little, is it the penny?
Coco?
Okay, great. Well, anyway, the Fortunato women have definitely found a little solace in shopping small the past few weeks. So that includes Loeffler, even though in our minds you're not small, you're a big, amazing, successful brand, and you're going to make it through. So, Jessie, thank you so much. We're just
Thank you guys. It's so good to see your faces. I love seeing you guys, and I'm so inspired by you. Like the energy that you've had during this. I mean, I feel like I just couldn't do anything when I was pregnant, and I feel like you guys have been so energized. You've been packing up boxes yourself and doing all these great talks. So,
well, you know, we all do what we have to do, and you're doing a ton of heavy lifting too, and it's kind of like we all want to be around in a few months. So it is, and we feel fortunate that we even have the opportunity to do it. So
it's the motivating factor, and it's the really good support system. You have Brian, who, despite your best efforts to hide from him, is your other half, and Lizzie and I have each other, and good husbands who kind of cook us dinner while we're still in front of our computers dealing with, you know, PPP loans. So
the PPP loans.
Exactly. We'll have to do someday a Creative Women's Coffee about that, but we won't start depressing people yet. But for everybody who tuned in, thank you guys so much. This will be available on our IGTV. We'll have a link up on our website, and you can tune back in and tell your friends. And until then, we'll see you next Thursday.
And visit loefflerrandall.com.
Next Thursday, we've got Lauren Sherman from who's an amazing fashion editor. The Thursday after that, we have a very special guest in that it's going to be our mom for the Thursday before Mother's Day. So,
that's so great,
Jessie.
Happy Mother's Day.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye,
guys. Thanks everybody.
Everyone.
Take care.
Bye.